Welcome back to another episode of the Apocalypse Podcast. Today is another exciting one because me, one of the co-hosts, Kyle, along with one of the other co-hosts, my brother.
That's me, Taylor.
And returning the champion himself, Carver. Say hello, Carver.
Hello, Carver.
Hello,
Yay!
Carver.
We're doing another Magic podcast today, and we brought back Carver because he's our resident Magic guy. And today is going to be rebalancing 5 banned cards in Standard. Now, that is not the current Standard. These are just cards that have been banned over the course of Magic's lifetime when they were legal in Standard. We're hoping to do an episode on like modern banned cards or commander cards or whatever, but this one we narrowed down a list amongst us of 5 cards that we thought would be interesting to talk about and were particularly egregious and crazy cards at the time that they were printed and eventually got banned. So this episode is going to be us discussing what our rebalanced version of these cards is. Hopefully that makes sense. So, I'm super excited about this episode, and I'm just going to get right into it. You guys ready?
Ready.
I'm ready, like...
Taylor's ready. I'm interrupting.
Ready.
Shut up.
Just go.
Okay. So, the first card we're going to talk about is Smuggler's Copter. This was in Kaladesh Standard, and it was banned because it just did so many things. It was way, way, way too good. So, you guys have, meta talk here. You guys are looking at my picture on your Discords. We're ready?
I'm smuggling a look at your speedster over here. Got a custom name. That's a good way to know.
Carver,
right.
you got it? You looking?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Ready.
So, I did literally one fix to Smuggler's Copter. And I'm going to regale you with a tale of why I did what I did. All I did was I changed Smuggler's Copter from flying to haste. That's all I did. Now, the reason I did this is because, number one, I felt like changing anything else was making the card too much like Sky Skiff. Right? I debated taking away a power or taking away a toughness, and when I did that, I just looked at the stat line, I looked at the text, and I was like, this is literally just Sky Skiff, but with like one extra line of text. It just felt weird. I don't know if that's valid or not, but that's just how I felt when I was trying to balance it. I'm like, this is the rare version of Sky Skiff, so it should be upgraded in a couple different ways, and just having a 2-cost, crew 1, flying as a 2/3, it just was too much like Sky Skiff. So I felt like I couldn't justify taking away a power or toughness. Making it a 2/2 seemed too weak. So all I did was change flying to haste. Now, the reason I did that as well was because flying, quite frankly, is what made Smuggler's Copter so goddamn annoying. It was so evasive. It was so hard to deal with. It hit you for 3 every turn. It wasn't card advantage exactly because you draw and discard, but it helped your opponent dig through their deck so much that they had just more answers than you. They had more tempo than you. They had more responses than you. All the while, they have this evasive creature that you can basically only kill with instant speed removal. And it was hitting you for 3 damage every turn, which just adds up really, really quickly. So I thought, all right, what if I just make it so that when it deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card, then discard a card? Well, then that takes away its ability to block, which I thought was a fun component of this card, that you can leave it back on defense, which no one ever fucking did, because why would you? You're attacking for 3 every turn. It was amazing. But I was like, I like the functionality of attacking and blocking. I feel like I'm talking on cocaine or something, even though I've never done drugs in my life, but whatever. And you guys have not said a word, which I love. It's just me fucking talking for 15 minutes straight. Anyways, continuing. So, changed flying to haste, and it struck me that, like, removing flying makes combat with Smuggler's Copter just way more interesting. Because I also thought, okay, let's say I change it to when it does damage to a player, you draw a card and discard a card. It's like, well, it still has flying, so it's still evasive. People are always attacking with Smuggler's Copter anyway, so it's not like they're really going to be changing the gameplay pattern. And I realized that, yeah, doing the balance of making it do damage to a player instead of triggering on the attack or block, it just didn't really solve the issue of what was Smuggler's Copter. And so I was like, what if I just leave everything the same but give it a different keyword? And that's how I came across haste. And that's why I also changed it to Smuggler's Speedster, because it can't be a copter if it doesn't have flying. So I was like, what if this thing, usually it was turn 1, you play, oh my God, why can't I think of the name of the card? I'm so embarrassed. What's the name of the card? The 1/2 that investigates.
Oh, Thraben Inspector.
Yeah. So it was turn 1 Thraben Inspector, turn 2 Copter, and then you crew Copter because now it has haste and you can just swing in. And I was like, that's a very aggressive turn. But let's say they have a turn 1 Thraben Inspector. Now they could chump block if they were really desperate to keep their life at 20 or something. But like, just removing flying to me, I felt like was a really good, simple solution to solving the card. And I think that's about all I have to say for now. What do you guys think?
I hate to do this now. Should we discuss what Smuggler's Copter is, like the base version of the card? Is that something we should be doing as we go through these 5?
Yeah, we probably should I think that's my vote.
No, so here's the thing. Our previous episode, we didn't really read the cards out loud because I'm going to do the edit. I'm going to put on the screen what Smuggler's Copter is, and then I'm going to put our balanced version next to it. So people are going to see the cards. And I was like, I don't know that. I guess it's pretty easy to read cards quickly and just give people an idea if they're not looking at the screen or if they're not familiar, but I don't know. You guys think we should read the cards going forward?
I do.
Okay.
I think at the top.
I think I give some context, yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I said this after you already talked about it.
No, and I definitely thought about it, but my reasoning was like, our previous podcast, we didn't do it. But that probably also had to do with the fact that we were talking about a million different cards, so it would be too much to say every one, but yeah. So
like
Smuggler's Copter, I'll just do it now. Fuck it. It's a 2-mana 3/3 flying. When it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, but it's a vehicle and it has crew 1.
Okay.
And I changed all I did was change the flying to haste. So,
all right.
Spiel, go ahead.
After hearing you, it makes me not want to not share mine, because I realize this is such a much more elegant solution, because I think I like the idea that it can now, you can do something against any deck that even has incidental dudes. You can throw at least in front, even in like a white blue control deck would have Thraben Inspectors, but not because I want them for creature combat, but they're incidental dudes that can at least then play against the Speedster version of this card.
Yes, the Speedster.
I like that idea of just taking the flying away. I don't have anything other than I prefer your version. And I do know that it's also a product of was this the set that vehicles became a thing, or was this the second set in the block?
No, this was it. This was
the first one.
Yeah,
this was Kaladesh.
So
Yep,
this is the because all the vehicles in this block, this set were pretty overtuned, or at least the ones that were overtuned were really over. I just remember them all being kind of
not
a little
really. Smuggler's
No.
Copter was such an outlier. The only other one was Fleetwheel Cruiser, which was really, really strong and fun and cool, but it wasn't played that much.
Okay, I'm thinking of the Sky Sovereign,
console
Skyship.
That one was
And then
okay too, but it was not.
And then the Heart of
expensive.
not the Heart of Quran, but it's
the
one
is.
you can use Loyalty. Oh yeah, Loyalty as a crew.
And that
was the other one.
That one
Aether
was
Revolt.
in Aether Revolt, so it was not in this block.
Oh, okay.
So Smuggler's Copter
I'm
was
across
for
these
sure an outlier problematic vehicle. This is the one where they were like, let's see how far we can push this and make them good, and it was clearly the best one by miles.
It's really interesting. I think your change is good. I like giving it haste, but one thing that's kind of interesting about vehicles is that after a board wipe, the vehicles that stick around kind of give the new creatures that come into play haste already. I'm interested in a way, you know what I mean? Because you still have a vehicle, you can tap the creature you play immediately to crew it and then attack with it.
Yeah.
I like the change because flying is just very, very strong.
Yes.
But I like it, but I was going to say another reason I like this change is because I think you could easily find moments where haste is a stronger ability than flying, like against control decks, or just in racing situations. It kind of, I think this is a really strong change.
What's interesting? I'm sorry, Carver. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you made me think of the idea of, like, by giving this haste, this now when you top deck, it becomes a spell that's like tap, draw a card, discard. It becomes like a looting effect now that this has haste. If you top deck it, it's like an actual spell instead of a creature you have to wait a full turn to get a value out of.
Or hope they attack you and then block.
So like that is like a buff in a different way, but it gives it more modality, I think. I don't know. I just thought of that as...
No, I totally agree, Taylor. I wonder if, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if the fact that it didn't have haste before is why they have the line about whenever it blocks, you draw a card and discard a card. Because like if you did top deck it with, the original version, you'd play it and then you could, crew
That's
it
a good point. I didn't think of it that way. Okay.
With haste, you're less likely to do that, but I agree that haste is a simple change. I think it's interesting, Kyle, that you compared it to Skyskiff, which is a card that was like nowhere near banned
Not even
or played
close.
at all.
Yeah.
And even when Smuggler's Copter was banned, Skyskiff saw no play.
Nope.
But it is interesting that you were like reluctant to make changes that would compare it like less favorably against that card or whatever, like make it too similar.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like but one of the things you think about with this card is like it kills people very quickly when you put it in a red-white deck, right? Or something like that. Paired with your burn, paired with your aggressive creatures, like this thing, it levels up your creature. It crews for 1, but it hits for 3, and it digs into your deck for your answers. It's like it just did so much, and just so instinctively you think like, okay, well, to reduce this thing's strength, it just like make it hit for less. Right? Reduce the damage it does. And I'm like, but then it's literally the exact same stat line as Skyskiff, from mana cost to crew to power toughness to its fucking printed ability. I was like, so all this thing did was they took Skyskiff, change it to rare, and add draw discard? Like, that's so lame. I can't do that. So, yeah, I just felt compelled. And honestly, if I can toot my own horn, I was actually pretty proud of this change because... I did toy with it for a long time. I'm like, okay, I make it a 2/2 then. It's different from Skyskiff, but like that is significantly weaker than a 3/3. What if I do crew 2? Well, then you're putting 2 power into this 3 power thing, but it's a 2-drop. So like, how likely are you to have the ability to even crew it by the time it wants to attack? And like, if it's crew 2, I mean. And so I went through a lot of ideas with this, and I'm like, wait. That's it. I was like, wait.
Oh, that's the full thought. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, wait. And then I came to this. Like, what if I change the keyword? I thought vigilance, but then I'm like, no, because then it gets crewed, attacks, and blocks every turn. That's way too good. And yeah, haste to me, it was like, it pushes the card in the direction that it already was. You play it, and then if they don't deal with it immediately, it's just this nonstop threat that's ripping your health apart and digging through their deck. And like, yeah, I thought haste just kind of added to the spirit of the card, but it removed a huge vector that made it so hard to deal with in flying. Now you can actually block it. Being a 3/3 is still like big power and toughness early in the game, so they're probably not going to be able to deal with it even on the ground. And yeah, I don't know. I was pretty proud of myself for this. I was like, man, haste is actually a really cool way to fix this card.
I like your change. I think it's good.
One anecdote I will throw in. I have to mention it, and I gotta put salt in Ryan's wound. Ryan Labaki, historically, has had the most insane luck for card openings of any person I've ever met in my life. The dude, like, had barely started Magic, and he opened the Soul Ring Invention.
That's all I know about Ryan is that he has a Soul Ring invention.
Yes.
That's like,
dude, he's got it graded and he's got it in his little hard plastic case. I mean, that thing's probably worth like $1,500 fucking dollars now. He opened multiple foil windswept heaths
Yeah.
Like the dude has insane luck. So of course, to further this, one day he's like, I'm gonna buy one single Modern Masters pack and see what I get. He pulls a fucking Mana Crypt. Okay, Mana Crypt. It's
asshole.
like so.
But that's not how he got this, right? Or is it?
Well, no. Listen. So he opens a Mana Crypt, right? Ryan is just flush with card cash. He's got all these crazy expensive cards and he barely plays the game. We all start getting heavy into standard at the time. Smuggler's Copter is going insane. It's $20 for one copy. Ryan's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll buy a playset of Smuggler's Copters. I'll trade somebody my Mana Crypt for their playset of Smuggler's Copters. Ryan does this. He gets the other cards needed. He builds like the tier 1 list with Copters at the time. That's super, super good and competitive. A week later, they fucking ban Copter. So plummets in price to like $1.50 each. Ryan basically traded in his Mana Crypt for nothing. And Mana Crypt, of course, has only gone up in price since then. I mean, that thing's a couple $100 now. So just wanted to do a little shout out to Ryan who traded his Mana Crypt for like $4.
Man, that'll make a man quit Magic. So kudos to Ryan for sticking around. You know what I mean?
Think about how much that memory is worth monetarily speaking.
Yeah.
Probably at least the difference.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So,
did he also open a foil Lily of the Last Hope when she was really expensive too?
the pre-release. He got her in his pre-release pack.
I mean, we're talking, he's probably opened less
What
than
the
2
hell?
boxes of Magic cards
Total.
in his Magic career. Yeah, and these are some of the pulls he's gotten. So
he
it's
usually
pretty remarkable.
bought like fat packs, which were cheaper, $20 for 5 packs or something, and he went to pre-releases. But yeah, I mean, the ratio of money he's spent on Magic versus what he has opened is even outside of obviously the Soul Ring fucking invention. That's just insane. I mean, the dude's ratio is like 50 to 1, the amount of money he's opened versus spent. So there we go. There's my Smuggler's Speedster change.
I love it. I have
Sweet.
Taylor, I don't know if you want to you seem down on your version. I can go next if you want, Taylor, or
No, I'll go. Let's have a compliment sandwich, okay? Let's have a good one, and then we'll have the bad news in the middle, and then a good one at the end. All right. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I had to emotionally get ready for this. All right. Smuggler's Copter. All right. I didn't rename this one. I made one small change. I don't know. So I guess there's 2 small changes. So the big thing is I changed it to it's no longer a blocks trigger. It's only an attacks trigger, but I upped the crew cost to 2. So my understanding of what I thought Smuggler's Cop like inherent strength lied in is how aggressive it is. So I was like, all right, crew 2. And then at that point, I was like, that could have been all I could do because like I didn't understand really. I've never played with this thing, so this to me is almost like I'm bouncing it from reading notes about if it's good or not. So I don't really understand it. So that's why I'm like, I don't love this one. The original way I had this I took it instead of it to just be a blocks trigger and a crew 1, and the idea was it was aggressively costed crew-wise, but then it also rewarded you for holding it back. So it was a decision you had to make.
I like that.
But then I was like, but it is an aggressive card. This is supposed to be an aggressive card, and so like my idea was like this is a way to turn your dumb like I guess I was thinking kind of more in a limited space. Turn all your dumb like kind of ETB 2-drops into loots. As this thing flies over and like turns like kind of that was kind of the idea of how I kept it, but like now that I've thought about it, what I really wish I had done was my original idea of it just being a blocks trigger with crew 1 instead. But right now I have it as an attacks trigger only, crew 2.
Okay,
that's all I got. I don't know. I think it's probably a little bit better, a little bit less overpowered than the original version. I didn't feel very inspired. This one to me felt like you got some notes and you have to like make an edit and you're like, this sounds better. I don't know how I feel about it though.
The thing I thought about too with Crew 2 was when I like took a step back and looked at the card, I'm like, how playable is this actually? Going from Crew 1 to Crew 2 is to me was pretty massive, which of course I thought about changing it to Crew 2. I mentioned that. But when I looked at it a little bit deeper, I was like, that is actually a huge change, changing Crew 1 to Crew 2. Like, Crew 1 means even the dinkiest random ass fucking token will be able to crew it, which is what makes this thing so strong. Crew 2, now suddenly you have to commit way more, get rid of more blockers to get this thing attacking, or you have to tap down your bigger creatures. And Crew 2, I feel like is a big enough change that you wouldn't have had to change anything else, and I think Crew 2 kills this card.
You think it kills
you're
it?
Probably right. I would at least hear out someone saying that, because I always think of like Monastery Swift Spears, or like a lot of mono red is what I think of this card in, right? And my context for mono red decks are like 2020 forward, and almost everything is a 2x. Everything has, so like in a lot of ways I see Crew 2 as like all this blocks out is ramp decks. But it's possible that like we're both kind of thinking of different formats, because I would agree that probably when this was around, Crew 1 is too, like, I think I could be convinced that Crew 2 was too much, but
well, I don't know.
I also hate aggressive cards.
Well, no, you're trying to get it not banned, right? So I think Crew 2 is probably the way to do it. So I remember Smuggler's Copter being in red-white vehicles, Thraben Inspector being a marquee card. A line that you could do with Crew 1 is Thraben Inspector, Smuggler's Copter on turn 1, Thraben Inspector. Turn 2, Smuggler's Copter. Turn 3, second Smuggler's Copter, and like another Thraben Inspector.
And another Thraben, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then attack with the first one. You can crew the other one to block. But if you have Crew 2, then your line becomes something like Thraben Inspector. Well, you don't even play Thraben Inspector.
No, you just play something else.
Yeah, you try to probably crew it, and Crew 2 doesn't stop some of the best versions, some of the best lines where you'd play Smuggler's Copter on 2 and like Veteran Motorist on turn 3. But it definitely impairs the deck for sure. I think Crew 2 would slow this up significantly over the course of the game. You're probably going to run into situations where like turn, later in the game, if they kill your higher power creature, you have to make a decision. Yeah, because you would need multiple creatures to crew something, or you have to build your deck in a way that's slow enough where it just wouldn't have been as impressive because you want every creature to be able to crew Copter on its own. So, yeah, I think Crew 2 is a good change too. I mean, it's simple, but I think it's effective.
I just think the more you talked about it, the more I think about it, I think Crew 2 does completely kill this card, because you have
it's possible.
You have to get rid of so much additional like chip damage and alternate lines, like you're saying, by having to commit more resources to get this Copter to attack. And the whole point of Copter is that it's this aggressive thing that, that is it's cheap and it's aggressive, and that's what they wanted in the card. And Crew 2 makes it so that I don't think it fits super well into an aggressive deck anymore with Crew 2, which means I don't think the card gets played. I could be off base.
I got to ask that. Was our goal to like try to get the card to make sure it stayed played? Because I don't know if my version of Copter probably wouldn't be played either.
I think it's easy to overcorrect. I think my intention was to make it a playable version, like a version that, like, if it were to, let's say, all of a sudden be updated to this text, the decks that ran it would still at least like it, or at least consider it. They wouldn't instantly be like, well, this card's dead, I need to replace this, as much as like, no, it's not as powerful, but I still it still fits the role that I wanted in. Like, that was my intention, at least.
Yeah, in my head, it's these cards were obviously too pushed that they got banned, so I want them to be, I wanted us to try to balance these cards in a way where they just didn't get banned. So they're still played, they're still put in the same kind of decks that they were before, or maybe new decks are formed because of it, but yeah, obviously you can make Smuggler's Copter cost 5, and then it's not going to get banned, but it would never get played either. So yeah, in my head, it's like, I still want these cards to be played and playable.
But, well, why don't we pass this over to Carver? Because I don't really have anything else to say, and I think whatever you would say about my card would probably get brought up with Carver. So
yeah, let's see.
Well, now you guys are making me. I'm doing. This is probably disallowed, but I'm making an
live
on the
editing?
fly. a live edit.
You fucker. Okay.
Look, if it's a good edit, you still have to call out what you changed.
That's fine. That's fine. It's fine. No, no, it'll be fast. It's fast. Freaking cheater. So this is I don't know if you guys can see my thing. This is my original edit. I left everything on the text the exact same except the power and toughness. The logic I have, but instead my new edit was going to make this a 3-1 to keep it aggressive because I think that actually keeps it competitive.
I thought about that too. Okay.
But because the 3-1, so yeah, let's get rid of this 2-1 shenanigans because I don't know, I probably neutered it too hard. Bear with me. I apologize for the shoddiness of this, but
no, that's fine. So you changed it from a 2-1 was your first edit. Now you think a 3-1 is the fair version. Same card, but get rid of 2 toughness.
Yes, the logic with that is because this format was in a format with like Whirler Rogue, and whatnot. And like think about a world where a 3/3 Smuggler's Copter, even if your opponent plays a Whirler Rogue, which is a 4-mana card and brings in 2 Thopters with it. It still can't block Smuggler's Copter effectively. You know what I mean? Like it just gets absolutely owned by this card early on in later game too. So I thought that 1 toughness would allow smaller creatures that fly or have reach, like Ishkana's spiders it brings in, to or cards like it that were played at the time, to be able to block this card.
That what was the noose snake or something that with Delirium it becomes a... Wait, does it just become Death Touch? It's like a 1-mana 1/1 Death Touch, and then I thought it got +2/+2 in reach if you have Delirium, something like that.
Noose Constrictor.
Yes.
2/2 reach. Discard a card, get +1/+1. So that card doesn't really change much against a 3/3 versus a 3/1.
No, I'm totally.
But 3/1s are also, you can. I don't think Disfigure is in this format, but I think there was a different black removal spell that could deal with something with less than 3 toughness.
Wasn't there a single black give something -2/-2 that was played? That is Disfigure though.
I might be off on that, but I just feel like a 3/1 was just an easier card to answer overall. I like leaving crew 1. I think it's cool that it's aggressive. I think flying's aggressive. And prior, I thought 2/1 was a pretty probably definitely not going to get banned and maybe not even played. I think this 3/1 I think this 3/1 would still see play and not be banned because it's just easier to deal with, I don't think there's a red removal spell still, even at 1 toughness, that it would... I don't think this format had a good red removal spell at 1 mana, which is part of the reason why I think Smuggler's Copter was so good. There was no instant speed 1-mana artifact kill spell. There was no. Instant speed like shock. There was what I mean?
There was that. There was only the white mana sorcery speed kill an artifact, but I think like the owner gains 3 life or something when you kill it. So it was a sideboard card versus Copters.
Fragmentize was maybe what you're referring to. It just says destroy target artifact or enchantment converted mana cost. I think 3 or 4,
3 or less, 3 or less.
It might be less than 4. It might be worded something like that.
Okay.
Which is okay, and people did play it, but it's just like...
Yeah, it's still sorcery speed, it's garbage.
It was like the one answer, right. I mean, one of the things I thought about with vehicles was that if you had a good instant speed answer, then your opponent has to invest in tapping their creature to crew, then you kill it instant speed, like before they attack and get the thing, the trigger of drawing and discarding. But this Copter in that specific format ducked a lot of that removal, and there was not a lot of great ways to block it with, other creatures because it had 3 toughness. It was just kind of an oppressively sized card. Even like a Spell Queller couldn't even trade with this card. You know what I mean? So it's like that's just some of the context that I remember this card being played in. So I thought making a 2/1 initially and then maybe 2 is too weak. So 3/1 is probably where 3 is probably where I would settle, and flying still might be too good. I like changing haste to haste. I think that would be also really good, and crew 2 for sure too. Definitely changes the context this card was played in. So, but yeah, that's my Smuggler's Copter. So
okay, because I remember Unlicensed Disintegration became kind of the staple removal spell at that time. But
you have to pay that 3 mana.
And that got played in Copter decks too. So.
Oh, yes.
think-
Yes, it most certainly did. Because Unlicensed had the...
that was
wasn't
so
Unlicensed
stupid too.
destroy target creature or artifact if you control an artifact, also deal 3 to them?
Yes, yeah, for 3
Yeah.
mana. So yeah, in Copter decks too, it's like you. It was either I'm pretty sure it was mostly like Boros with Black Splash for Unlicensed, and that's how you ran the deck. Or was it full Mardu decks that ran Copters? I don't know. I can't remember. It's been too long, but. Yeah, just combine Copter's 3 flying every turn with drawing and discarding, Unlicensed Disintegration. I mean, the deck was just so oppressive. You just lost life endlessly and died. So 3-1 is interesting. I definitely considered that. I don't know why I backed away from it, because I do think it is a really good solution. Maybe I just thought like a 1/1 dinky token flyer being able to trade with this would feel bad if you're playing Copter. Like, how are you ever attacking with this as a 3-1? I guess if they just don't have flyers, you're winning anyway. So, yeah, maybe a 3-1 is a perfectly fine solution, too.
I agree.
I love it.
And silence. Okay, we're done. Yeah, no, that's... Yeah, 3-1. I like it. Leave everything the same. 3-1. All right. There's our cards. Next on the docket is Skull Clamp.
Oh.
Skull Clamp is... I gotta find it. Skull Clamp is it's an artifact equipment. It came out in Mirrodin back in 2004. 1 mana, equipped creature gets +1/-1. Whenever the equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards, and you equip it for 1. This card was like busted beyond belief. It got banned, of course, because any single token you have that has 1 toughness, you equip Skull Clamp to it, it dies immediately, and you draw 2. So Skull Clamp effectively read most of the time 1 mana, draw 2 cards. It basically was just an enchantment that said 1 mana, draw 2 cards, sacrifice a creature. Like,
but Kyle, you lose the creature. It's balanced.
Yeah, and then you play creatures with modular, so their counters just stay on the battlefield, and you keep moving the counters to all the other artifact creatures. Or you play Arcbound Ravager, and you equip a clamp to a bigger creature, and you sack the creature to Ravager, modular all the counters back. Like, it was just stupid. Skull Clamp was stupid. So my version of the balance is change it from drawing 2 cards to drawing 1 card. I thought, so first of all, of course I thought, first, what if we got rid of the -1 toughness? What if it was just +1/+0? If the equipped creature dies, you draw 2, so that way you actually have to have a sack outlet, you actually have to work for getting this thing killed. Which, again, with Arcbound Ravager being in standard at the time, with like Ashnod's Altar and shit being around, I don't know if it was in standard at the time, but I want to say like Phyrexian Altar at the very least was. I felt like...
Wasn't Kark Clan Ironworks?
Yeah. Crack Clan, Kark,
or whatever
Kark
it is.
Clan, I think Kark, Kark Clan Ironworks.
Cock Circle.
What?
Cock Circle Ironworks.
Oh,
yeah.
Cock Circle Ironworks, Circle Jerk Ironworks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
So, yeah, I thought maybe there's enough sack outlets at the time. And again, not again, I guess. Apologies for my lack of research. I didn't look into Skull Clamp standard, but this is just going off my assumptions. I felt like there's probably enough sack outlets that removing the -1 toughness doesn't quite help it enough. Which maybe it did. Like I said, the fact that this thing is self-contained, like you literally pay 1 mana and just kill any token you want to, or any 1 toughness creature to draw a card, 2 cards immediately. I was like, it's crazy good. The real reason that I changed it from draw 2 cards to draw 1 is because I really liked the 1 uniformity, or what's the theme? 1 to play, +1, -1, draw 1, 1 to equip. I loved the look of this. Just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and I was like, that's fucking cool. Drawing 1 card is significantly worse. It's literally half as good as drawing 2. I had to be British because, British people are smart. I was educating you guys.
What the fuck is happening?
So yeah, that's my edit. I changed it from drawing 2 to drawing 1.
I like it. I think also this actually is a nice thing. It's the Grizzle brand effect.
Except they
of
fucked
like
up Grizzle brand.
Yeah, exactly. Like knowing that as how it feels, it's nice to have this nice clean ones all the way across. Um, I like it. I feel like drawing one card. I feel like it's probably still, especially in the set it was in, like it probably wouldn't be. This is probably still an issue, but I don't think it snowballs nearly as fast. Like it feels like a reasonable. Like you'd have to put in effort, and it's not. It takes a while before it becomes advantage. Like you have to put, the skull clamp itself needs to equip to a guy, then it dies, and then it's card neutral, and then again for it to be like card positive,
Right.
and it's one power, and like it doesn't make it very good at surviving. Yeah, I like it. I do think that removing the reduced toughness is probably, ironically, it would make it weaker, but it does remove the uniformity of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good change. I mean, one of the things I think that's really good about the way Skull Clamp, is where you draw 2 cards is because it instantly replaces itself and gets you another card.
Yeah.
This one to replace itself, you need to pay 2 mana and have, the right creature and sack outlets to get it to work. And then to get another card, you need 3 mana. With the other Skull Clamp, with 3 mana, you'd be drawing 4 cards. So, yes, I agree. The 1 card is probably just a pretty effective change. Probably, hopefully, would keep this card from getting banned.
Yeah. I don't know if I should discuss what my other thoughts were in case it like infringes on what you guys do.
Let's hold off
Yeah.
because actually, let's do mine because you actually touched on what mine was.
Okay. Nice.
So, I removed the -1 toughness, but I added an extra rider at the end.
Ooh.
And what I would like to reword is like, I don't know if this fits in the rules, but the spirit would be it needed to die in combat with combat damage, right? But the general idea is like I wanted it should read probably if they died to combat damage instead of in combat, but
yeah.
At the same time I kind of still like that, like if they're in combat and get sacked, like fine, that's good enough. But I like the idea that it isn't going to be on your main phase for you to like circle jerking your ironworks, you have to be doing this stuff and like being clever with it or being kind of tricky or very the advantage needs to be generated like, I don't know, with a little bit more interaction with your opponent,
I see. So is this going to be a theme for you, the 1-2 punch? Did you do that for a lot of your cards?
So wait, what's the 1-2 punch?
Well, so far with Copter and this, you've changed 2 facets of it.
Oh,
Right?
I might have, but it was not on purpose, but I think I may have without even realizing that's something
All
I
right.
did.
Let's see.
There's a couple. There's one, in fact, for Field of the Dead. I have 2 written because there were 2 things I wanted to try so specifically, but I felt like they were good enough designs on their own. But I don't for me. This was the only. When we said Skull Clamp, how do you fix it? My thought was if it dies in combat. That was the original one, and then I was like, you know what? Let's remove the reduced toughness to make it. It's an equipment. I kind of want it to feel like, okay, this should feel stronger, and then, like dying in combat and drawing a card is the benefit. I don't need to like incentivize that more. Maybe, and like it also lets the X1s interact with Skull Clamp and be used in combat too, and like it makes sense. You'd want your Elvish Visionaries or whatever, those guys to go, and after their ETBs go off to be used in this manner. So
yeah, interestingly, changing it to drawing if they die, which I'm racking my brain thinking how that should be worded. Has there been a precedent set for what it means to die in combat, or would it say draw 2 if it was attacking or blocking, or draw 2 if it died to combat damage? What would it say?
I think realistically is probably combat damage, or if it was attacking or blocking. I think that I don't know if my wording would be supported officially in the rules, but I think that would be. I think it'd be interesting if there was a phrase that you could be like, cards in combat are referred to as like battling. So it'd be like if they were battling, draw a card, that type of thing.
You know what? That we're fucking mark this. Come back.
Come back
in 7 years. We'll see it, dude. It's crazy. This is like that's sort of anecdotal side note here, but there has been, over the years, there's a subreddit called Custom MTG where people post custom cards, and there has been some of the funniest, worst cards you've ever seen in your life on there. And,
God,
sorry to these people, but like, yeah, if they'll be like, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for 15 years and I played Magic once and decided to make this card, and it like doesn't make any sense and it's hilarious. Like, people do that shit all the time. But there was one guy specifically who was obsessed with truncating the words on cards to the point where it was almost a meme, like that shitty later season of The Office where Kevin decides to like stop saying half of the words in sentences. Like, why say many word when less word get job done? Yeah. It like his cards were almost a meme like that. They were all so truncated that they was like bizarre looking sentences, although of course you knew what they meant. Anyways, my long-winded side note story is that he predicted enters. He, on his cards, instead of saying enters the battlefield, he would just write enters. And I don't know his name. I wish I could shout him out. You Reddit user from 5 years ago of Custom MTG. But
that's funny.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit. Everyone always made fun of him too. They're like, it needs to specify where it's entering. This doesn't work because of this and that. And then like Magic new rules show up and they're like, nah, we're just saying enter now. And people are like, oh, that's great. Yeah, it saves card space. So
yeah.
Anyways, I like this change. I like you because maybe I already said this. I can't even remember now. If you leave it to draw 2 cards, but only if they died in combat, the -1 becomes hugely detrimental. So that was a good change to let it actually be equipped to a creature to do something before it dies. Because if it's +1, -1, but then you only draw from combat, like this thing probably sits there for a while till it can find something to equip itself to, which means it probably wouldn't have gotten played.
Yeah, and like with this design, it incentivizes it to be like an equipment, right? The idea is it's supposed to make creatures like better in combat. Yeah, and like maybe they were trying to make Skull Clamps not like that, but I feel like equipment, that is kind of what their purpose is. It's supposed to modify creatures, and what do they like to attack?
I also like. Oops, sorry.
Oh,
Carver. I don't think Carver's spoken about your card yet.
Let me add one last thing, is I also love mechanics that incentivize bluffing attacks, or why are they taking this bad line? On board, this is a bad attack, why are they doing it? And the cards like this let you bluff and then make you be like, it's like the mechanic, I think it's Morbid, the one that like, it gets an extra effect if something dies this turn. That being in the format makes it so like when players take bad attack lines, you're like, are they bluffing something, or are they trying to get a Morbid trigger, or are they trying to sneak in some damage? Like, what is that? And I think this design allows for that kind of gameplay.
That's interesting.
I like that a lot.
Taylor, that Morbid didn't make it into your mechanics ones, I think.
I should have shouted it out, to be honest. It's like you asked me again today, and I give me top 5 and honorable mentions, and they'll be different.
Yeah, it's a good. I like your explanation there. I like how it does kind of twist combat. I was just going to mention, I like how your change is pretty simple. I think overall their change is, but it just throttles Skull Clamp, which I think is smart, because one of the things, I mean, this isn't standard related, but one of the things I find that happens a lot in EDH for me in decks that have Skull Clamp, because of course you got to play Skull Clamp, it's amazing, is that you might spend your whole turn just doing Skull Clamp. You know what I mean? Where you're just paying 1, killing a token, drawing 2, paying 1, and your change making a combat does make it like, okay, well, I equip to this a creature, attack. Okay, you didn't block, fine. Then I'll move it to another creature, and then if you attack me, now I'll block. So I feel like your change is smart for that reason too. It just gives like a throttling to it, but also like obviously your opponent doesn't want you to draw 2 cards. There's extra decisions at play there.
That's so interesting. I didn't even realize I put a throttle. Like, I straight up didn't even consider it's like, oh, you can't like keep moving this around in combat, right? Like, this is it's as if I added this ability triggers only once per turn on it without putting it on there.
Yeah, or like once on your turn, possibly once on your opponent's turn. It's cheap, so you can easily float it to an untapped creature to block with. Yeah, I think that's a good change for sure.
All right, Carver, I'm excited to hear your...
You guys are going to like mine, I think, because it's very different from your guys's. So
okay. I see some stuff.
So it's funny, Taylor, the whole time you were talking about how you want equipments to feel like they make the creature better. I was like, man, that's funny because my equipment like almost specifically does the very opposite of that. So the way that I designed this was, and maybe this would still get banned, I'm not sure, but the way I designed this was I want the equipped creature to get -2/-2 instead of the +1/-1. The logic for that is I changed its draw trigger to say that the equipped creature has to be sacrificed. So it takes away like the ability for you to just equip a small creature and get the benefit. You have to be like basically, and from a flavor perspective, I like the idea of like this clamp, like impeding some larger creature that just like is weighing him down and controlling him and gathering information from him. And then whenever the creature, when you're done with it, you sacrifice it, then you get your benefit. Maybe that's a little metal or something, but like, I don't know.
Holy shit, dude.
Just
well, you're preaching to the choir on that metal thing, because damn, that's awesome.
But so yeah, and then I wanted, because I like it when cards are like holistic, I added this line of text here. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you can sacrifice the creature skull clamp is attached to you. Kind of, it's timed. So again, I'm kind of playing with that throttling too, where this is only like a once per turn thing. You get like the guarantee of it. But yeah, that's how I designed it. Now, if you have a bunch of 3/3s or like 1/3s or whatever lying around and a sacrifice outlet, sure, you can really have your cake with this card and draw a bunch of cards. But I feel like that's a very rare thing. I don't think that would have occurred in the standard format this card was legal in. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is kind of a weird change. I'm not sure exactly what this would fit into, but I just had this like top-down vision of like what I wanted Clamp to do, and kind of tuned it for that. Again,
I fucking love this, Carver. This is so cool. I love that this has an identity now. Like, it is a set, like, it tells a story that, and I think it also doesn't, there's a throttle with them. The fact that it like only works on like beefy creatures, and then like you can just like kill it at the beginning of an upkeep if it survives anyway. Man, I love this. This is so clever. This is so cool.
See, it's like I'm torn on this because I do like the idea here, but when I think about this as an equipment, it's very bizarre, and I don't know that. Is there an equipment that exists that just gives pure minus power and minus toughness for like a benefit later?
I don't know.
This feels almost like an enchantment to me. Somehow this needs to be worked into an enchantment, or like some kind of artifact that's not an equipment, but it like sits there and has charge counters, and then you can move charge counters to do stuff and sack something and draw cards. Something about this doesn't quite strike me as like being an actual equipment.
But what about that's why I like it, because it is a play on equipment, because an equipment is just something you attach. It's something it is being used by another creature. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good for the creature, and like the value is in that you are getting something, you're drawing cards out of it, and like I don't know, like I hear what you're saying, but I think that's why this works. I think as a one-off design of like here's a set of equipment that isn't like good for the creature, but is still accelerating a game plan and has a design purpose. And, I think it's hard because it's weird because it is. I think you're right that there isn't an equipment that is I'm putting on this on a thing to make it bad, exclusively bad.
I went through
like what?
Oops, sorry.
I was just going to ask why couldn't this be +2/-2 or +1/-2, or it just seeing -2/-2 on this equipment is just so weird to me, and knowing that like you have to put this on a huge dude also sucks. Like you're killing something with 3 toughness minimum. You have to, right? Because if anything less will just instantly die. It's not sacrifice. You don't draw cards. So you've turned this card into requiring it to be put on big creatures, and at that point, so like you couldn't put this on a Frogmite. You'd put this on a Mirror Enforcer, so you'd probably have some kind of like, affinity deck that plays Mirror Enforcers cheap, and then you put Clamp on it and almost turn it into a Frogmite, but then it still has to be sacrificed, so like you don't want to be attacking or blocking with it, and it feels clunky from I don't know.
No, I get what you're
I'm
saying.
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm critical.
No, it's fine.
Just how I'm feeling about it.
No, it's good. I have no problem with that. No, it's maybe you make a good point. Maybe the -2 is unnecessary. Maybe it could even be a benefit, and then you just like it could be a +2, maybe a +2 equip 1. It's ridiculous.
Perfect, dude. Good.
No, but I hear you. Like
Yeah,
it could be like a +2 -2 or a +2 -1, and then you still have that option, your upkeep, to sacrifice it. One of the things I thought about with Skull Clamp was I wanted to find a way to throttle the ability of it. I thought that the die trigger it's very easy to just trigger that. I did think about combat damage, but then I was like, but then you can't scale it ever. You know what I mean? So you can never make it like super scale if it's on combat damage. So I thought, well, what if it's when a creature is sacrificed? And then I added that line for the upkeep to kind of facilitate itself. The -2 is tough, and I understand that because you have to equip it to a 3/3 or at least a 3 toughness creature to even get anything from it. Which maybe that is the wrong way to go. Maybe having it even +1 -1 again with the same whenever a equipped creature is sacrificed, draw 2, and at the beginning of your upkeep you can sacrifice it.
That's something for sure. I think you leave it as +1 -1, but then you just change how you draw the cards from it to what your version is. It has to be sacrificed, and then at the beginning of your upkeep you can sack it. I think that is a great version of Skull Clamp. I also think it could just be -2 +0. So you'd still get the effect of it like weakening something, but you would still have to commit resources to try to get this thing killed. That doesn't stop you from putting it on your little dinky, like, Pentavite tokens, right? Which is kind of what Skull Clamp used to just eat up. You play Pentavis and then Skull Clamp all your Pentavites and, all your little modular guys that just get, that just buff Arcbound Ravager. So, yeah, I guess I don't know maybe necessarily, like, what problem... Again, we didn't do our research, so we don't really know like what the true problem of Skull Clamp was. Obviously, our experience is playing with it over years in Commander and kitchen table Magic and stuff. We know how strong it is. But yeah, I wonder if -2 +0 is still fine, or if that still doesn't solve the problem of Skull Clamp.
See, the other thing, and this is where I get out of standard and I start talking about EDH. What I mentioned before, that line where you can just for 1 mana draw 2 cards. That doesn't change if you have a sack outlet and leave it at plus like -2 +0.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't change. If I have a Viscera Seer, I'm still able to just sacrifice the creatures that have 1 toughness and draw 2 cards.
But like, isn't that still changes. Okay?
No. So I think I would prefer it to be +1 +0. Maybe I just go back to that or +1 and -1. So that, because part of my idea was I didn't want someone to just be able to equip a bunch of 1 toughness creatures and draw a bunch of cards for 1 mana. I felt like that's too easy. You know what I mean? Like that's too...
yeah.
And so that's part of even if you have a sack outlet, that's why that's a part of the reason I specifically wanted it to be whenever it's sacrificed. So if you die to a state-based loss of toughness, you don't actually get to draw the cards. Or if somebody shoots it or, whatever... with a removal spell, because that's another thing about Skull Clamp that's so annoying is that even if you just equip it to a bigger creature and they kill your creature, you still get to draw 2 cards. So it's just like for your opponent, it's annoying. So that's part of it. But again, Taylor's fix gets around that too with the combat damage, at least the removal spell aspect. But yeah, so so maybe the final version for me would be +1 -1. Maybe I was getting a little too cute with my theme there and went a little off the books, a little off the reservation, so to speak. But maybe I'll edit that and make it that. But because you're right, -2 is just so like, how are you supposed to?
Yeah, how do you play this really? Yeah. Like, how do you realistically play this? I don't think you can. I don't necessarily think that. Let's say it was +1 +1 +0. Like, then you have to have Skull Clamp, you have to have mana to commit, and you have to have a sack outlet. And then you have to have creatures that want to be killed and clamped. Which, of course, in the decks that Clamp is in, usually that's not hard. But I feel like that's enough moving pieces that maybe you shouldn't necessarily be penalized that much. But anyways, whatever. Maybe we're talking too long
you're
on
right.
These cards,
that
but
with all those moving pieces, would Skull Clamp have been banned? Probably not. right?
Yeah.
If you need to have Arcbound Ravager plus Frogmites, plus Skull Clamp plus mana, like maybe that's asking for too much. Right now, the way originally Skull Clamp was, you just need like any 1 toughness creature and Skull Clamp,
and you just equip it and it dies and you draw it. It's crazy.
Yeah, unreal.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Anyway, I might change mine. I'm going to change mine to +1 -1. I think I prefer giving it minus toughness. I prefer making it a little harder for you to you to be unable to sacrifice 1 toughness creatures, and get the draw 2.
Like being able to put Skull Clamp on a Frogmite is just so appealing to me. Now, I don't even know if Frogmite was played at the time. I'm thinking I have kind of Pauper brain, so that's where my Frogmite and Mirror Enforcers are coming from. But like, yeah, +1 -1 lets you at least put it on Frogmites, which is fair. -2 is hilarious. It just insta kills your Frogmites, and you get nothing. But all right, cool. I really like the way you and Taylor both were able to tweak how the cards are drawn, but they're in completely different ways and both very thematic. Very cool. I like that. I'm a minimalist guy. I live my life minimally I like things to be like clean and simpler, but it doesn't always make it more fun. Like your changes prompted more talking and it was more interesting to think about versus mine. Just like, I'm just making the card fair. You guys are making the card interesting. Okay, so next on the list, I feel like we're going through these really fast, but it's already been an hour.
I was like, no, we're not going through that fast.
So the next card on the list is Field of the Dead, which I don't remember what set it came out in, but it's a land.
M24.
I think you're right. It was like M22 or something.
It wasn't. Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, it wasn't like an Amon Cut card.
Yeah,
it was different.
So it's a land. It's called Field of the Dead. It enters the battlefield tapped. It taps to add 1 colorless mana, and then it has the text that reads, whenever Field of the Dead or another land you control enters the battlefield, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So what happened with this card was you just played Fields of the Dead. You played a bunch of different non-basics, so usually this was played in like 3 or 4 color decks with Omnath at the time, and you ended up playing, I can't remember the name of the card, but it's you basic, for 4 mana, you sacrifice as many lands as you want, and then you
Scape Shift.
Scape Shift. So you Scape Shift your entire land base, you sacrifice any number of lands, search your library for that number of lands, and put them into play. So Scape Shift, you literally just like swap your lands in play for new lands. With Field of the Dead, you just search, you have 15 lands in play, you sacrifice your whole mana base, you go get 4 Fields of the Dead along with 10 other unique named lands, and you get 40 Field of the Dead triggers. It was just bananas. So I did the Taylor's special, the 1-2 punch, the 2-pronged attack. Number 1, I added a simple word to Field of the Dead. Legendary. I made it a legendary land because the original Field of the Dead is not legendary, which means it scales exponentially, and it is insane. When you have 2, 3, 4 Field of the Deads, you play 1 land and get just a gigantic stack of tokens. Like, so hard to deal with. So I changed Field of the Dead to be legendary, and I made the tokens enter tapped, which they normally didn't, which I also didn't even realize when I had to reread the card a couple times. I'm like, wow, I cannot believe they didn't make these enter tapped. So changed it so that you get only one Field of the Dead in play at a time, and your tokens enter tapped. I think that's still a really good rate for a fucking land. The opportunity cost is so minimal, too, for this thing. It's a land. It gives you mana, and then it also is your win condition. It's crazy. So I figured make it legendary, make the tokens less oppressive and aggressive, and maybe that would fix it and still keep it playable.
Yeah, I won't say too much about. So I also thought about making it legendary. I think that was the obvious like.
It feels like a legendary power to me. It feels like this is a significant land. It feels like it should be.
The fact that it comes into play tapped, why I like that so much is that it still doesn't let you just put like play fetch land and like have walls up again after being cleared out, right? You basically have to have an extra turn at your defenses online because it like you want to play lands every turn anyway. So I think that's a really good way to give the power still to Field of the Dead while also not letting it be an offensive and defensive like. Yeah, there's be so many times you wipe the board and the opponent untaps and somehow manage to play 3 lands in one turn with 2 Fields of the Dead, and they have 6 2/2s untapped, ready to go again. Jesus. But if they stay tapped, they give me some time to put some more pressure on, yada yada. It's cool. I like it.
Was Scape Shift in Standard at the time this card was
Yup.
Yep.
I think they were the same set, my friend.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, it was disgusting. I didn't even play Standard, but I remember I think I was watching MTG Goldfish quite a bit at the time, and I know Taylor was. Yeah.
I was playing Standard.
But yeah,
probably the most I was playing Magic was at this time.
Yeah, I remember watching MTG Goldfish videos, and they would just play Standard and stuff, yeah. And I remember seeing Scape Shift Field of the Dead, and I'm like, that is so dumb. Kind of like Amulet Titan decks kind of stuff.
And it doesn't help that it had that Pilgrim, what's the name of that guy?
Golos
was also in that set. He lets you basically, he's a payoff for having Uro in your deck, as if Uro isn't a payoff, like, because you pay Wooburg and you just spin the wheel and get this, Cascade 10 off the top of your deck. It's nutty. So part of what made Field of the Dead so insane, I think, is it was a lands matters format. If that was like in Standard today with no fetch lands, like this thing would be like dog doo doo.
Oh sure, so yeah. It had big support for it. Yeah. How does Field work with being legendary and Scape Shift? You can still search. Like let's say you can still search for Field of the Deads. You'll get all the triggers. That
wouldn't stop the Scape Shift play. Still, technically, you'd only get to keep one Field of the Dead, but it still would get the same number of triggers as if it was non-legendary.
Is that right?
Yeah. Because that's how like different legendary creatures work. Like if you play one,
they still get the ETB triggers and they like see each other.
Well,
but
it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't stop the Scape Shift bomb, but that's also why, incidentally, the tapped tokens would help with the Scape Shift.
Yeah, exactly.
Bomb, and you would then end up only with one. So if they do board wipe you, like you have to work harder to get your zombie count back up, because you only have one Field of the Dead in play when all is said and done.
Yeah, good point. With 4 of them, you just, you board wipe, they play a land, here's 4.
Yeah, like Taylor said, you play 1 fetch land and you're back up to 8 zombies, or like 6 zombies is just, it's nonsense. So.
All right, you ready for Kyle? I need you to look... Because I have 2 Field of the Deads. One of them, it was basically the exact one you put, except this was my change as well, as I added to Field of the Dead, so it becomes a legendary land.
The Field of the Dead, nice.
Because that's why it wasn't legendary, because it was just a Field of the Dead. Now it's the field.
The field, yeah.
Okay, nice. So that's it. That's
okay. So yours was similar. All right.
But this is the other one that I tried to be a little bit more creative.
Love this one.
So I changed it instead of a 2/2 zombie to a mass 2, because I think 1 tall token is significantly easier to deal with than a wide one. I think because everything that messes with wide boards affects tall ones. And then I also have I have it so it only triggers once per turn. So the Scape Shift play still maxes out with 4, and I think that even play a land, get a 2/2 or a 4/4 or a 6/6 is enough as it is. I think a mass is a really clever... I don't know how they got the rules to make that work. I think it's cool. I like a mass. There's not a lot of ways it shows up. And I feel like it does, like a Field of the Dead would have an army token instead of just generic zombies in my mind, I guess. I don't know. Any case, that was the big thing. I used a mass instead and capped the triggers.
Flavorfully, so first of all, congrats. Beautiful, beautiful changes. I really like this. I almost don't even know if the once per turn trigger is necessary, because amassing, going tall is significantly more easier to deal with than going wide, I think. Maybe I'm misspeaking, but with the way the Field of the Dead's Dead decks worked, I'm pretty sure Amass would make them way worse. But
for sure.
I think you're right about Field of the Dead being about warriors, because the only place you would have a field of dead people is in an area where like a giant battle took place, right? Otherwise, why would you have, I don't know,
or
maybe
like
if a bunch of people die from the
decimation.
plague randomly, or like what do you say?
But in any case, you could work that easily into flavor. And Field of the Dead, I think, is a good name because that's just a generic description of like a mass grave. So it could be worked in any like in reprintable way. So I think it's also a clever thing there. But yeah, I was really happy when I came. Like I felt I a little pat myself on the back, a little
Nice,
smug.
I'm
Like
glad,
dude,
it
I
feels
got this
good.
one.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't really. It's crazy. It still makes the exact same like type of token, but it totally just like kind of reworks it. So
I think triggering once per turn might be smart too. Honestly,
I
know Kyle.
Even if it's,
I feel like because if you have one, like you saying, one fabled passage, or I don't know if that was exactly in the format, but Evolving Wilds, whatever,
it was.
Then you could easily. I mean, how many? If you have a couple of these, since you're not legendary at this point, right? So you could easily get an extra 12 power and toughness with 2 lands, like 2 land drops. I feel like triggering once per Field of the Dead is a smart way to throttle it, and it's not. I don't think it's like making this card unplayable. You know what I mean? I think that's.
Yeah, I even toyed with keeping it, making 2/2s and having it just have a trigger limit.
Yeah.
But I also kind of just liked the. I just think I like Amass more for this anyway. But I am happier keeping this non-legendary and then having the trigger capped, because in some ways this is me admitting that I kind of like it when Magic puts limits on some of their designs, because if people can't stop themselves from just making the game as unfun as possible by playing infinite loops. So anytime they can prevent a loop from happening, the more fun I have with random strangers. So that's my spiel for being okay with this ability triggers only once per turn, because I think it's more it's better to have a card that's a little underpowered than a card that everyone like looks at and like rolls their eyes and bitches about, But anywho, Carver, what do you got?
Taylor, I gotta say, your version is my favorite version. This version on screen right now, or the one with the
Yes, I win this round.
I love it.
I will say, side note, more thinking about flavor. Field of the Dead does imply many dead. This would be more like Field of a Dead, if you think about it.
All right, change the name, Taylor, and then you're good. All right,
you know what I'm saying?
Why? Huh? No,
because Amass builds into one thing, where this implies many dead small zombies things.
But the Amass is representative of an army. It's just represented by one token. It is literally a wide army. That's why it's amassing like wide, but it's only the in-game represent
When you build up Amass, the zombies get on top of each other's shoulders and put like trench coats on, bigger and longer, and they get taller.
Oh, you're right. Oh,
they literally turn into one gigantically huge skyscraper height.
I see. All that's happening. More zombies don't appear. The one that does just gets taller.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, they stack up.
Field of a Dead.
Field of one
gonna
dead.
be with the name.
That could.
Field of the one dead guy. Okay, damn it.
Get
Field of the one dead guy would have been so good.
Field of the one dead guy. All right.
I guess Kyle wins again. All right.
All right.
No, yours was great, Taylor.
My change is totally silly. It's what we already covered before. I just made a legendary. That's literally it. I thought that was enough to throttle it.
It feels so obvious, right?
I thought that was enough to throttle. If I would have thought about scape shift in the standard format, I probably would have done something else to throttle it more. I figured being legendary, at most you get 1, 2, maybe 3 zombies in a turn, and you already need to have 1 million lands in play. You need 7 lands with different names in play already. I felt like a legendary was enough to make it not that ridiculous. But yeah, given the skate shift thing, this would still be, I don't know if this would be banned if it's legendary, but I think it'd be probably pretty close given skate shift. So that's the only change I made, though. Very simple.
I think because The idea with this being legendary, too, something I'm thinking about now, is that if your big play is scape shifting 4 of these into play, then your opponent can respond with a board wipe, right? You scape shift, they board wipe. That board wipe does sort of reset, it like resets the balance. Now, you still have a Field of the Dead. Like we're saying, you can still play a couple fetch lands or do some shenanigans, play your Uro, play this shit to get 2, 3, 4 lands in play, and you can rebuild your token base again, but it's not as oppressive as like the big scape shift bomb, you board wipe, and then they just do Uro fetch land bullshit and get back, 8, 10, 12 zombies the same turn. Like, that feels so ridiculous. So at the very least, making this legendary, it doesn't stop scape shift, but it does support the counterplay to it a bit better.
And in some ways, I feel like if you were to design a card you wanted to be played everywhere, letting escape shift have its one like that, like it's kind of like it's better for the card to be playable, and escape shift has like one, like it's a good payoff, but it does feel like you get one escape shift shot and then you're kind of done. You don't get to like escape shift and then escape shift later, or like the next lands you play now are insane. It doesn't set you up to be like completely busted the way a non-legend does.
Yeah, it's a way to, like how you said with limits, Taylor. It's a way to limit scape shift. So it's it's cool. Yeah, it's a good point. So yeah, that's all I had for Field of the Dead. Again, I was running low on time, so I just kind of
yeah.
That one was easy.
Phoned it in.
That one you could feel in your gut. All right, Uro is the one I'm curious.
Yeah, all right,
that's
my
what
turn.
we're doing next.
All right, this one I had to get a little creative. I did not a full rework, but somewhat of a rework. So here we go. Got to read Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath ability to everybody. That's going to take 45 minutes.
Popcorn.
Uro is 3 mana, 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 blue. He is a 6/6. It says, when he enters the battlefield, you sacrifice him unless he escaped. His escape cost is double green, double blue, exile 5 other creatures from your graveyard. If you do this, then you may cast him from your graveyard for his escape cost, so for 4 mana. And his ability is, when he enters the battlefield or attacks, gain 3 life, draw a card, then you can put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So, needless to say, Uro does about a million things. And I had to dig a little deep and rework him a bit. What I changed him to was, instead of entering or attacking, do all of the things, gain 3, draw a card, and put a land into play, I changed him to this. When he enters the battlefield or attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and gain 3 life. Otherwise, draw a card. So, I didn't want Uro, I wanted to keep, of course, kind of the spirit of the card alive, but I didn't want him to get everything. So I sort of got inspired by Coiling Oracle, which is one of my all-time favorite cards. And I thought this version of the card, it keeps him very strong. You always draw a card from him at the very least. Then, if it's a land, you still gain the life, you still get to play the land, but the land enters tapped, which is something that I can't believe the original Uro didn't do. You get to play it untapped, which is bonkers. The other thing is, I figured because Uro is so crazy strong and oppressive that revealing the top card of your library, that's just a little bonus to your opponent, the card knowledge. Having them be aware of all the cards you're drawing while casually attacking with a 6/6, getting mana ramp and gaining life and drawing extra cards, maybe them knowing the cards you're drawing will help them beat this fucking monstrous piece of shit. But anyways, I thought this might be enough of a balance tweak to get him not banned. I think he probably still would have gotten banned even with my version here, now that I have actually read him and thought about it again. But yeah, I don't know. I kept the kind of base card intact, but just tweaked it so that it wasn't quite as unfair and oppressive. What do you
I
think?
like it. It's cool. I really like the change. I do like that it's now, instead of just a hidden information, everyone gets to see it. And it feels like it would still be as... This feels like a card that if it was changed to this now, I feel like the decks that like him still like him a lot, you know? So this feels like a power down that doesn't feel like you're gutting it, you know? You're not trying to like remove it from the format. You're just trying to make it feel less, you know, less powerful. And I feel like that was a very elegant way of doing this without really removing anything that makes Uro unique.
I 100% agree. This
Nice.
card doesn't get banned, I don't think. Like you talked, I don't think so. The original Uro is so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
just
crazy.
The fact that you can't control this, I feel like there's just no way it gets banned. You know what I mean? Like, see, one of the crazy things about the way the original Uro is worded is that if you draw the card, you play them, sack them, cool, whatever, you get the trigger, you draw a card, you can just have lands in your hand.
Yes.
And it allows you to ramp.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the fact that this, you have to reveal it on enter or attacks, and it has to be a land to get the ramp, I feel like really throttles this card in a way that would be, I couldn't see it getting banned, you know, but I like these changes.
I am realizing now how hard. I mean, of course I realized it when I made the balance, but it is occurring to me more so that how hard I sort of funneled this card into playing the top of your library versus playing out of your hand, which is what the original Uro did, like you said, where if you just have 7 lands in your hand, like you can just start dumping them. But this version of my version of Uro forces you to be playing off of the top of your library and already have a hand that might do something outside of just Uro. He felt so stupidly unnecessary, especially with Growth Spiral in the set. You know, like he was Growth Spiral on a creature, right? 2 mana, draw a card, and then play a land from your hand, or put a land from your hand into play. In green blue, like it just felt ridiculous that Uro was the same thing but just completely on steroids. So I wanted to change the way that it worked. I also something I was thinking about while balancing this card was how he mirrors Kroxa, which is the other Elder Giant of this set. He was black-red. When he entered or attacked, your opponent discards a card. If they discard a non-land card, if they discard a non-land card, oh my god, why am I saying this weird? They take 3 damage if they discard a land.
Yeah. Yep.
So my thought was to mirror this a little bit is like, you know, Kroxa, the way he plays, he makes your opponent discard cards out of their hand. He messes with your hand. You see stuff from their hand. I was like, what if Uro sort of inverses this and it pulls cards off the top of your library, but you still like...
I did not realize how much better this is a perfect mirror now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too.
Oh, that's so pretty.
So, yeah.
I date that. Sorry, Brianna. It's over. I'm dating this edited card Kyle just came up with.
Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath is my new boyfriend.
Uro's Titan of Nature's Wrath is going to go nature on my wrath, if you know.
All right. So, that was mine. Thanks for listening, guys.
So I also made one. I don't know if you know this, but
Okay,
I've
nice.
also
Thank you for doing that.
In this what we call Cod Past. I made I went kind of a Kyle angle. I removed one bit of the enters and attacks trigger. I just removed the life gain. I think part of the reason that he was such a problem is it let you ramp, draw. So it was card advantage, it was ramp, and it was like it fought like multiple archetypes, right? Aggro and like control decks. So this way now you can't use it as this infinite stall, so it can beat any aggressive deck. Because like it doesn't let you keep ramping yourself while keeping away aggression. So that's, I thought just removing the life would be enough. I still think it's probably too pushed. But I didn't know what to do with it to make it like balanced without like just changing. I don't want to balance it like in the power toughness. Maybe it's 6 cards. It's a 5/6. That stuff I'm not as much it's like the effects I like to tweak more. And
I avoided that too because Croxa is also a 6/6. I didn't want to mess with that.
Oh yeah, and now that you talk about the mirror between Croxa and Uro, I was like, shit, I shouldn't have removed the 3 life, but that's what I picked because I think that that's the thing that really kills it for me was it just let the ramp player also be getting the white benefit of staving off aggro. Like I don't know, it just feel like that was one step too far.
Uro just did everything. It is still mind-blowing that they put all of those words on that card. I still don't understand it. So, yeah, no, removing the gain 3 life certainly helps bring this card down a notch. I dare say this still gets banned.
Yeah, I don't know if it's enough.
It's just growth spiral on a stick.
And that was the other thing is like I tried to then turn it into literally growth spiral on a stick instead of growth spiral
plus life
2024 edition.
Yeah.
You know? But I think if I would also change my text to be yours where it says when it enters reveal the top and if it's a land otherwise draw it. Like that's I would do that except remove the life writer. Mm-hmm. I would change mine to what yours says except with no gain.
Even without the life. Okay.
Yeah, I really do think the fact that they also gain life is what's too far because like you're paying 1 more mana for a growth spiral with flashback. It's already like
that
growth
gains life.
2 mana.
That gains life and kills your opponent.
And when it, I was gonna say when it flashes back, it's like the most strong creature in the battlefield.
Exactly. So and like there's ways to stifle the ETB trigger, and like there's ways to even make it so that you can play this for 3. It's a 3 mana 6/6 with all this stuff. So
what do you think, Carver?
What was I have a quick question because I didn't really play a lot of standard with Uro. He was with Omnath, right? The Locus of Creation, or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure was.
See, that was so mine is it's funny. It's almost identical to Taylor's, except I actually just drop putting lands into play and just say you gain 3 life and draw a card. Because I think the life gain, it's so funny. I think the life gain is traditionally like less important. I don't think without the landline, it's a very thematic card because I don't think you're not really dealing with nature. You're just like, unless you think gaining life, I guess. But you're not putting lands into play and kind of furthering your position. But I thought the ramping was what really kind of made Uro silly. Like I just, any card that's like that ramps and draws cards and whatever. Uro's still ridiculous. This version still might get banned, but I don't know. I felt like in the landfall format, in the time he was, in standard, I thought the ramp was maybe the most OP component of the card. And so I thought just removing that text about being able to put a land into play just kind of neutered him the best way. Maybe not. But
my experience with life gain is when you just add gain 2 life on the end of a card, it totally powers it up in a way that like I feel like what it does is it just incidentally protects you from an entirely different incidental angle. Like all of a sudden, incidental damage didn't matter anymore. Like the 2 damage you took early in the game just doesn't matter, and that's why I feel like the life gain is inherently not powerful, but it just makes it so you can't. Your edge cases are even harder to hit. You go from like a 50% win to like a 65%.
Right, yeah, the red decks can't suddenly just get you with that last piece of burn. It's like, no, Uro is furthering he's card advantage, he's ramp, and he's mitigating any kind of like bleeding that you might be experiencing. Yeah, it's just
one Uro cast and then him escaped is 6 life. Minimum.
Yeah.
So, and like that, how many that's at least 2 to 3 burn spells. That's an entire attack phase. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's like an entire archetype that's eliminated. Uro, a single card called Uro eliminated red aggro decks entirely. Like,
yeah, red aggro was not good until like Bloomborough. Really,
yeah,
it's been a long time that where mono red just could not put out the damage because so many cards had the rider and gained 3 life.
Right.
There's so many, and that just it's weird. It's not powerful, but it is when it's free.
I think it's like Uro is just so busted. It's probably just no matter what you do, it's not. I think the ramping kind of invalidates like the rest of the decks. You know what I mean? Like I think the ramping is what's like like you draw a card, you ramp, you can do it again. It's I don't know. Yes, gaining.
I don't know, but
so hold on. Let me stop this because Carver is. I'm seeing on our streams here. Carver has already pulled up his card and is talking about his card. He's not talking about your card necessarily anymore, Taylor, which is what I thought we were doing.
Oh, cool. Oh, poop.
No, he mentioned. No, he mentioned that it was the same as mine, except his was.
I know, but I thought he was doing that as like,
oh, crap.
as a like, I'm talking about your card, which is similar to mine, but okay. So
I'm
anyways,
sorry. No, I thought we
that's
had
fine,
moved.
that's
I apologize. No, I didn't.
No, at this point we could. Taylor's. It's funny because both of your fixes are basically the same. They're just a slightly different vector. You know, Taylor removed the life gain, you removed the land gain. So. Interestingly, they are very similar. And looking at both of your cards side by side, it's like I really don't know which one is better. Let's move on to Carver's. So Carver's, you're good. So really Carver's. Oh my God, the infinite screens. Yeah. So Carver's gains 3 life and draws a card. No ramp at all. So you play this on 3, gain 3, draw a card. You get no ramp. Then you escape him. Yeah, playing the land is definitely the more powerful thing.
Yeah, being able to play a 5-drop on turn 4 with just Uro, that's always been rampant. I mean, it's possible I don't understand the context of that standard format and what other cards were around. Maybe gaining life did like block out, aggressive decks that would have not been otherwise.
All right, so what?
But in general, in my experience, ramping is just, generally better than gaining life, just because if you're like, let's say if you're not playing against an aggressive deck, your ability to ramp, like gaining 3 life almost doesn't matter if you're not playing against an aggressive deck. But going from 4 mana on turn 4 to 5 mana on turn 4 is a big jump. And so I don't know. I kind of, again, maybe I was using too much of my past experience and not understanding the context Uro is in standard, but again, I just, in general, thought, the ramp is probably the strongest part of this card, so I'll just get rid of it. But
no, I agree with you. We're actually kind of coming at this from 2 different angles. I am saying that you are objectively correct. Ramping is a trillion times more powerful, but I think the concept is like you're overpaying for a growth spiral. That's not unfair. That's a totally fair Magic card. Like, I just think the reason it pushes it into so much more powerful is because it has an additional effect. Because, like, Uro's ability, drawing a card and then putting a land into play exists as a card. Like, that, this is a stronger growth spiral, without a doubt. And there's a lot of other facets, but, like, the ramp it does is, I think, understandable. My point, but that's why I took the life gain out, but I agree that the drawing the card and putting the land into play, significantly more powerful.
Let me ask you this, Taylor. Let me ask you this, because obviously you played Standard at the time. I was no longer playing Standard at this point. If Uro was printed with your version of the text, knowing what decks he was played in, knowing how, like what he was able to do, if he no longer says gain 3 life, do you think red decks or aggro decks come back into the meta?
No.
See, so that's what I'm thinking. Now, Carver's, you gain life and draw a card, but you get no ramp. Does that version bring red decks back into the meta?
Probably not, because you're gaining life.
Absolutely not.
And mine doesn't either, because it's it's similar, but it's a little bit more narrow.
That was the problem. Is I think Uro is a problem of the fact that it was active when like an Omnath and like Zendikar standard existed too. Powerful lands, because it had triomes and creature lands, and
the fact that he put the lands in untapped means too then you get to play your fetch lands and activate them, so you get multiple landfall triggers if you're benefiting from that. Like, so that's also why I made the lands enter tapped, because I feel like it at least slows down the ramp. You can't like ramp how Uro currently is. You cast Uro, you play a land from your hand, and then you can tap that fucking land to play some kind of 1-drop draw spell to further you, or like a little creature or something. Like, so I don't think any of our versions of the card actually solved him. Now that I'm thinking about
that's
them
the
all.
thing. It's just like
yours for sure, Kyle.
You think?
Yeah, revealing is such a it's
for
yeah,
sure.
yours is probably the best version because it's just when you can't control something like that, I just think it instantly plummets its power level. It's just not you can't predict it. You don't know what's going to happen, so anything can happen.
Like I would say that Kyle's version is like Uro would be cool. I would have no issue with
I
it.
100% agree.
I
like
think you did solve the card.
I like that symmetry. What the hell?
Symmetry.
The symmetry. I like the symmetry with Croxa for sure. That yours kind of like kind of parries. They're other side of the same coin type thing. I think that's. I like your version thematically, and I like your version in general. I think your version is probably
power wise.
But Taylor or ours. It still probably gets banned. The card's ridiculous.
Yeah, so like going by my experience with the card, if it was the way you have it, Kyle, it would not have been nearly as big of an issue.
Would it have still been played? Had to,
yeah,
right?
I think
Croxa got played a lot.
Croxa, it was they're both. See, that's the thing is like. The effect is totally a fair effect, and like it's the fact that it can be repetitive, and it puts you ahead in two different angles at the same time.
Yeah,
like so. I think the idea of it ramping or drawing a card or giving you life makes it, I think, a better because it's a repeatable thing. That's why I think the idea of it's modular. Like there are different modes on it, but you don't get to pick all the modes every time. Yeah, I think that's. I'd be happy to see that Uro reprinted. Right. Like I would look forward to playing with that in a format. That's how I feel.
The untapped land. The untapped land is interesting too because if at any point in the current version of Uro, if you play Uro with 2 untapped lands, you can like chain into another Uro. Because you can like that's
what would happen all the time.
So then you're gaining 6 life. You're putting more lands into play. It's just so disgusting.
To be honest, when I was rebalancing him, I just assumed the lands went into play tapped. Because, like, that's what a sane person would do. I had forgotten that was part of what made it so insane was that, like, it was a one-man discount on everything you did. So, I've totally forgot about that. But I would suggest with how deeper in it now, I think Emrakul is going to take some time.
I got one more thing. Uro looks so effing cool. Uro is...
so dope. So is Croxa. They're both unbelievably cool.
Dude.
I will... shout out this entire cycle because even the one in Modern Horizons 3 I really love too. I just love this design. I think it's such a cool cycle so
Taylor
far.
will know more than Carver because I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Carver is blasphemous in that he doesn't watch Studio Ghibli movies. Am I correct?
What?
That is correct. I apologize, everybody.
Yeah. Utter nonsense. And I
have a stank face. I know you can't see it, but I'm really grossed out.
I can hear your stank face.
What I wanted to say was, Taylor, since you're the only cool person in here, apparently.
Jeez.
What Uro's face reminds me of is the forest spirit in Princess Mononoke. Doesn't it look a lot like it? Especially too.
I see it.
Yeah, it has this kind of like weird flat deer / human face thing with the big bulging eyes, and it looks kind of like creepy and alien, but natural at the same time. Like, I would be surprised if whoever drew that art did not take inspiration from the forest spirit. And
it's very cool. Yeah, I love the Titan designs are very cool. I think the Arrows has some pretty cool designs, so I think that.
Oh, it's amazing. Croxa's my. Yeah. He's such a fucking cool card. So. God, I love him. Anyways, moving on to our final card that we're balancing today. Emrakul, the Promised End. This is the one that came out in Eldritch Moon. Emrakul, the Promised End is a 13 mana, 13/13. He costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. When you cast him, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. Then after that turn, they take an extra turn. And Emrakul himself has flying, trample, shut the fuck up, flying, trample, protection from instants. He does a lot, and it's a lot to process. So I'm going to bring up my card now. Yeah. So he's a mouthful. At the time, you could get 7 card types in your graveyard, which would make him cost 6. But I think most realistically, people got 6 card types. They would get Artifact Enchantment, creature, land, instant, sorcery. So you'd get a 6 cost reduction on him, making him a 7 mana, 13/13, flying trample, protection from instants, completely fucking destroy your opponent on their next turn, make them swing all their creatures into you, and you favorably block and kill them all, make them cast their kill spells on their own stuff. You just ruin their entire fucking game. Then they get a pity turn after that, which does nothing to make up the damage you've done, because now you can attack with a flying trampler. So, I had a very hard time balancing Emrakul. The only thing I did was remove trample, and I changed his protection from instants to protection from sorceries. Reason being is that I felt if I changed, let's say you just increase his mana or something to 14 or 15, it ruins the symmetry of the mana with power toughness, right? 13, 13, 13. I like that, so I wanted to keep that. On top of the fact that 13 is like an unlucky number, which I think is significant for this kind of horror-themed set that Eldritch Moon was. So I wanted to keep intact the 13s going around. So almost right away, I was like, I don't think I can balance his mana or his power toughness. The cost reduction, maybe I just didn't spend enough time thinking about this card, but it just, with how distinct this card is and how specific the effect is, it felt like it didn't feel like there were knobs to tweak for me. So I'm really excited to see what you guys did if you came up with more interesting things, because I didn't want to ruin the card and how it worked. And it just felt like there weren't many knobs. So I figure, okay, remove trample so they can at least chump block it with their smuggler's copters. And then give him protection from sorceries so something like unlicensed disintegration can target it and kill it.
I really like your change from protection from instants to protection from sorceries, because at least with this version, if you held up mana anticipating your opponent playing an Emrakul, you can at least kill it on your opponent's turn before they take control of your turn and absolutely destroy your entire life. So, yeah, no, I think changing protection, I mean, that's maybe a little corner casey, but I think that, I didn't really put together before you change that line of text from sorceries or from instants to sorceries, how much Emrakul kind of locked your opponent out from doing anything to it until once after you're into your pity turn, as you put it, which I thought was a pretty apt way to put it. But yeah, so I like these. I like it. This change is simple, but I think it's good.
No comment from Taylor.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
No, I was making sure I wasn't cutting anyone else off more than I already have. I also forget that like you changing it to sorcery kind of does really open it up to be actually vulnerable instead of kind of invulnerable. And removing the trample, I think, is a really elegant, like clean way of having some way to at least be like, well, what am I going to do about it? And like, I don't know. You already have to have flying to block it. Like flying and trample feels like such a middle finger about like, just don't bother. So I think that it's not an exciting changes, but I think those are good ones.
That is exactly how I felt. I'm like, this won't be exciting, probably won't be able to talk about it much, but this feels like a way to make the creature not bannable. It's also a nod to the original Emrakul. The original Emrakul also did not have trample. It just had flying, protection from colored spells, and Annihilator 6, so it only annihilated you. You could at least block it if you had 90 squirrels and could sacrifice them all before he attacked you. So anyways, yeah, that's all I could do with Emrakul. Maybe this version doesn't get banned, but I still think it does, probably.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think at least it gets time to be. It might be solved. Like it feels solvable. Like, or at least like there's always the big bad threat in any format, right? That's the big kind of winner. It's like I thought about maybe making it have some colorless mana requirements in there. I don't know if that really would have changed anything, but I want to go to mine because I have two I want to show because I had two ideas and I don't know if either are good. This first one I have up is the spell costs up to 5 less to cast for each card type. So there's a cap on how cheap it is. That's how I tried to mess with it. That's the only difference on this one is I made it cost at least 7 mana.
8.
Yeah, 8.
That's what I said.
which it often did anyway.
And
Like
when
I
you
said,
s-
best
when-
case
so then
scenario,
when
you get 6 card types, but the standard at the time, he's usually being cast for 8. But he was played in a Golgari deck where there was ramp and there was acceleration, and so he was getting played on turn 6 anyway.
So that's where I would change this number to maybe a 3, because like I'll be honest, I did not do the math of like actually realizing that 5 is actually really hard. But the idea being it would be like 1 to 2 more mana than the like average, so it would probably be more like 3 maybe. But that was just like my idea of like, well, here's how I'd fix the casting cost without changing the casting cost. It's just put an upper limit on that. But this is the one that I couldn't quite word it right.
I see some more words here.
Whoa!
So when you cast this spell, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. Any loss of life that would bring any player to below 1 is brought to 1 instead next turn. After turn, they get an extra turn. And I realize I worded this wrong. The concept being, I'm trying to give the player that you mind controlled, like almost like a stasis bubble afterwards. I realize I need to word this that like on up until like the beginning of their next turn, they can't die. Like you can't mess with them more. Like you've already drained them all their resources. They get an extra turn to kind of like take a moment, breathe, and get their shit back together and try to like rebuild.
Man, how could
was the idea.
How could you do that?
So I like the idea is like until for the next 2 turns or until the end of the like, you know, I realized when I reread it out loud I was like, "Oh wait, that wouldn't solve the problem I'm trying to solve."
No.
But the idea would be
it would have to be until the end of your next turn, meaning the person who cast Emrakul.
That's what. Okay, maybe the idea
so it would
is
be,
I worded to
like any loss of life that that would kill your opponent and bring them to below 1 is brought to 1 instead until the end of your next turn. So that way they get their 2 turns in a row. Then on your turn, you still can't kill them.
Yes,
but you could bring them to 1.
To
but I see. But like you said, I agree. I don't think that solves the problem of Emrakul anyway.
I just thought it would be like at least it was my attempt at being like, well, how could you balance Emrakul as you give the person who got mind controlled like kind of a safety turn where they are divine shielded, they can't be killed, there aren't any tricks, little like gotchas, just like a turn to like you played the one ring, you get your turn to kind of set up your defenses or whatever, but I do realize that, like, I don't think I've ever had that cast on me and then actually seen what that looks like. It's always like, oh, you cast Emrakul, concede. All right, you got me. I don't think that I didn't really address how one lopsided it is, but I think that was just my attempt.
I think it's funny the way you have that any loss of life, any player, Emrakul also like shields you. So it's like if somehow on your opponent's second turn they would be able to kill you, they can't. So it's kind of like,
right.
I don't know. I think it's just an interesting little way that was worded, but yeah, this is it does shield your opponent for sure. If it's until your next turn, it does shield them. But they have like one. Yeah. They have like 1 turn to draw a board wipe or some way to deal with Emrakul.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know that I ever survived an Emrakul being cast. Did you?
No. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just like the first Emrakul, which we talked about.
It's
right, even if you did. Yeah, it's just like you basically, if you see Grimflayer, you know that they're playing the Grimflayer Emrakul deck and they're ramping, and you watch them play Nestle of Vacancy and fill their graveyard full of every different card type, and you just anxiously await like turn 6 and 7 and hope that they can't. Did they draw Emrakul? If they do, I lose. I remember one time specifically, I let my opponent do the Emrakul thing and watch them fuck up my entire life. And I was like, okay, even if I top deck a kill spell and get rid of Emrakul, do you survive this? And the answer is unequivocally no. They cast everything in your hand in the worst way possible. So basically, they empty your hand, they board wipe you, they tap you out, like
kill spell your own creature.
Yeah, kill spell your own creature if you've been holding one on. Like, it's just because, like
I
Carver
did just
said,
think of a way I wanted to address that problem. is you can only cast a spell of each type once on that extra turn that they mind control. You can only cast one instant, one sorcery, one creature.
That would be a cool balance, but does that even fit
it just came to me as you described it, because like the problem was I didn't play when Emrakul was playable in standard, so I didn't really think about what parts of this is the like broken part and what was the number that was the danger number, and so.
All of it, dude. Yeah. Even if she didn't let you take control of their next turn, I mean, she's a 7 mana 13/13 flying trample protection from instants. Like, it's nearly insurmountable, because again, the answers to Emrakul at the time in standard were instant cards. I think there was like Oblivion Ring effects, enchantments that got rid of stuff, so she was vulnerable to that. But maybe the blue-white spirits deck at the time could deal with Emrakul if she didn't take turns, like, because then you could Reflector Mage, but ironically Reflector Mage was also banned. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you survive Emrakul if she doesn't take over your turns, but the fact that she can just completely fuck you up just made her unbeatable. So, all right, Carver, what do you got?
So mine,
so far, she's not been solved.
Mine's quite a bit different. So,
oh, I see some extra lines.
Okay, so I kept the cost the same. I also put this line here that says instants that target this creature cost 1 more for each card type. So I wanted to give this like scaling ward effect. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, but like I didn't know.
I'm sorry. Did you make her better?
No. Because I say when you cast a spell from your hand, gain control of target opponent during that player's next combat step. So I didn't, because mind control sucks so bad. Like Mindslaver, sucks so bad. Being able, like what you described earlier, Kyle, where you take your opponent's turn, I'm tapping your mana before your combat step, and any mana I do use, I'm only using to screw you over. Like, it's just, the whole card is just ridiculous, that whole ability. So I was like, what if you just say, like, thematically, Emrakul comes in, and I'm going to take all your creatures during your combat step, and I'm going to completely destroy that. And then I'm going to take my turn normally. I did, because it's not Mindslaver, I removed the text that says your opponent takes an extra turn, thinking that, like, if all they do is take your combat step, maybe that's weak. It sounds ridiculous. Maybe that's weak enough where you can survive that and your opponent can just take their turn as normal. It's important also to recognize I changed that the spell has to be cast from your hand. One of the reasons Emrakul was banned was because of Aetherworks Marvel. So with all the energy shenanigans that got printed, you could play an Aetherworks Marvel on turn 4, and as long as you had six energy, I think is all it was.
Yeah,
you could tap Aetherworks Marvel and reveal the number of cards. And then Emrakul was by far the strongest thing to do for just 4 mana and a bunch of energy.
And Reanimator too. Would also.
No, because you still have to cast Emrakul.
You still have to cast it, but so those are my changes. I'm not. I still wanted this card to be really strong, but obviously it's Emrakul. You could remove any number of things on here, and the card's still probably amazing. But yeah, those are my changes. I think controlling just the combat step, I think throttles the Mindslaver effect in a way that I think would be effective. Because it just doesn't ruin your whole opponent's turn. They can protect themselves from that. So
instead of having Taylor, something to note here, instead of having just a blanket protection from instants, Carver changed it to the scaling instant cost. That's what he did.
Oh, okay.
So you can still target it, but if you're casting Emrakul, that also means instants targeting her are going to cost 4 or 5 more, which means nobody can ever cast those anyway.
Well, I thought that was almost hilarious. You could.
You pay 9 for your unlicensed disintegration. Yeah, no, that's true. Interestingly, what I will point out is that you still Mindslaver them as a player during their combat, so that means you would still get to look at their hand and cast their spells and fuck them up, unless. Which maybe, did you consider that? And you already mentioned, like, as the person playing against Emrakul, you'd have to, like, tap out pre-combat to make sure they can't cast your spells.
Yep, I didn't mention that specifically, but that I don't think, but that was
have to do.
Yeah, you would definitely do that, right? You would, as the player, you kind of got to throw everything ahead of combat, which could mess up things for sequencing. But things you want to do after combat, of course, now you're doing them all before. But yeah, so this was my fix for Emrakul. I think it still thematically works where like Emrakul is mind slaving the creatures. So it's not like, but it's doing it in a way that's not making it so your opponent instantly concedes as soon as you cast it. Maybe you still would in certain board states you still would. Oh, you're gonna take my combat
most of the time.
Yeah, you're gonna make me ram into Emrakul and it's not gonna be fun. But yeah, interestingly, it could. Well, no, I guess this isn't very interesting. I was like, what happens if your opponent casts an Emrakul after you cast an Emrakul with this design? Your opponent would then make it so you you would control their Emrakul attacking into your Emrakul on the next. So it's anyway, I don't know. There's like I didn't fully flesh out that thought, but there are definitely like I think this card is more interesting, gives more options than just I just get to figure out the absolute worst way to make you take your turn. Just because it's locked into the combat step. So the instant and sorcery line, or the instant line, is maybe just cute, more than it is like meaningful. I just thought it kind of played on that thematic of delirium and that type of cost reduction.
I guess there's like a real corner edge case where they are Aetherworks marveling Emrakul into play, and you only have like 3 card types in your graveyard at the time, maybe even 2, and so then they do get to like spend their entire turn 6 to unlicensed disintegration your Emrakul, so they still get to. There might be a world where that happens.
Sure, and once you blow like your 6 energy the first time you cast Aetherworks Marvel, it's going to take you a little bit of time to get it again. So
yeah, was it 6 energy or 8?
I think it was 6. I could be wrong.
Oh, I'm thinking of the heart that lets you take an extra turn.
Oh
no, Aetherworks Marvel, and then there was Gonti's Heart or something. Heart of Gonti's Mechanical Heart. What the fuck is that card called?
Yeah, Aetherworks is 6.
Yeah. God, it also says when a permanent you control is put into graveyard, get an energy, so it fuels itself.
Yeah.
The version of this deck that you talked about, Kyle, where like it's like the Grim Flayer, Ishkana, Vessel of Nascency.
Yeah.
This card doesn't lose a lot.
No.
In that version of that deck, because you're meant to cast it normally. I don't remember the Aetherworks Marvels deck. They were never meant to cast this, like from your hand, unless it was like super super late game.
8 energy. It is Gonti's Aetherheart.
Yes.
It's 8 energy for
8 energy. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. No, I mostly played against. Of course, yeah, it was Aetherworks Marvel played Emrakul, but I mostly remember the Golgari Grimflayer Ishkana Emrakul deck, which the deck just played like a really strong mid-range Golgari game, and then it tops out with an Emrakul as if it was ever fucking necessary. But yeah, that deck was so goddamn good. It was insane.
So I don't know.
I'm trying to play my budget brews with like Combustible Gear Hulk and shit.
So I don't know. I don't know if this version solves Emrakul. Maybe Emrakul is just too big a problem. But this is my version. So what do you guys think? You just think it's still banned?
I think
banned.
I think Carver's is closest because I think this is a classic of just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think losing your whole turn, like it should just say target player concedes the game.
Yeah.
You mean the way the original reads, Taylor?
Yeah. Yes, sorry. Yeah. The concept of like gaining control of a player's turn is more than just gaining control of the player's turn. There's just so much damage you do, that if nothing else, at least you've morally already won. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
So I feel like in a lot of ways you have to then redesign by removing the one thing that makes this card unique, and then it becomes a different card, so I think that's what makes it tough to figure out how to make this and not, I don't know, feel oppressive.
Well, that's why,
or not,
and that's why I picked taking control of the combat step, which I don't know if it's ever been done before, but that's like why I wanted it
I love that. I think
I thought that kind of was still doing that. Like I feel like it wasn't so far removed from the kind of vision or design or like what am I trying to say here? The story of the card or whatever. You know, I thought.
Yeah, no, you did two things with this, which I do really appreciate. I do think the instance targeting it cost more is just wasted text. It needs to still say protection from instance, because that effect, like we're saying, let's be real, it's still protection from instance. They still can't ever target this thing in a reasonable way, especially when they still get to control you at some point. Like we're saying, you tap out preemptively, but you know, it still sucks. So what I'm most interested in is you saying cast the spell from your hand. I think that's really good and narrows how good it is. Obviously, Aetherworks Marvel gets completely shut down by changing that line to, instead of just casting the spell, you have to cast it from your hand. Can't cast it from your library or, you know, from revealing. Then gaining control of target opponent during that player's next combat step. That one is really interesting. Like you said, I don't think I've ever seen that before. I really like that idea. It is weird. Like you get an idea of like a main, what do I do on my main phase? If I can't do anything, you just tap out so that they can't do anything, and worst case scenario, they just attack and make the best possible blocks and basically kind of one-sided board wipe you. But again, like, they have an Emrakul on the backswing, so you're just so fucked no matter what anyway.
So maybe it should be like you still get another turn after, like the player against Emrakul still gets to take an extra turn.
No, that would. Man, I don't know. Like. It is interesting to think about. I don't know how you fix Emrakul. Mindslaver is such a crazy strong effect, and I like your attempt at trying to narrow how good it is, but still letting it be a Mindslaver. But at the same time, like we're saying, all that ends up happening is the person just taps out. So it's almost working like an Elder Deep Fiend in a way, where you're just tapping down their lands and then killing some of their creatures. So it's not really letting you Mindslaver them, because every person who's moderately good at the game is just going to go, well, I don't want you to cast my spell, so at least I'm tapping out. And then, okay, now moving to combat, you take control of me, and they just swing with stuff. So it is almost more like you're just choosing which creatures attack and block that combat instead of a full control. But again, then that is a bonus to Emrakul, is like, because in my head when you were talking about this, I did think, wait, what if he just said, when you cast a spell from your hand, you control which creatures attack and block during your opponent's next combat step. It's like, that's basically what this card is doing, but no, then they still get to keep all their mana untapped and can play kill spells and stuff. So this version does, in a roundabout way, tap down your opponent, kind of neuter their turn, and kill a bunch of their creatures.
It might be. Yeah, it might be better to just make it a Master Warcraft. It might be better to do that, and then you get the hidden information of like, well, I guess I'll just draw my card. If it was Master Warcraft, meaning you just choose how things attack and block.
Yeah,
then,
things attack and block.
Right. Then you just like draw your card. Okay, go to combat. You control the creatures on the battlefield. Figure out how you want to kill them, and then you can decide. Oh, well, they didn't do this, didn't do that. And you have the hidden information. Maybe that's better. Maybe that's like balanced enough.
Especially if you keep it as protection from instance. Because they're still, they still can't respond with many kill spells. They would have to have the exiling enchantment stuff. So, yeah, I think if you leave Emrakul, the promise to end, exactly how she is, but then change her Mindslaver plus extra turn effect into just Master Warcraft on the next turn, I actually think that card doesn't get banned.
Okay.
Your opponent doesn't get tapped out. They don't get their cards ruined. They don't have their kill spells cast on their own creatures. They're still going to get completely fucked up in combat. You're going to swing and get rid of all their best defenses and then crack back with an Emrakul who's flying and trample, already insanely hard to deal with. But I don't know that it gets banned.
Especially if you keep this cast from hand.
Cast from hand, yeah. I think that only lets Emrakul be useful in the Golgari mid-range deck, and even then, Yeah, at that point you have 7. This is turn 7. Maybe you're casting Emrakul turn 8, and by that point the game should be close to ending anyway. So if Master Warcraft doesn't win the game for you after casting Emrakul, then they deserve the win. But then if you cast, I don't know.
I mean, that's one of the things about the Eldrazi in general, right? That like how many times have you?
We did talk about this last time.
Yeah, it's just you play the Eldrazi, it's amazing, it's so powerful, and like how many times is it the game move many turns beyond that? You know what I mean, or even any turns beyond that. So, maybe that's partly why Emrakul maybe wasn't a smart choice for this, because it's just like no matter what, the game's accelerated to a point where it's gonna be over really soon. So. How interesting can you make the mechanics of the card? I'm not sure, but yeah, I think your points about making it Master Warcraft are strong. I think that's probably the better way to do it. So you're not like limited. You don't have to tap out pre-combat or anything like that, and your opponent doesn't get any information about what's in your hand. So.
And then you still have to deal with a 13/13 Flying Trample Pro instance coming back at you. So. You're still pretty much on the losing end here. You're probably dead, but at least it's not a guaranteed instant concede.
Maybe still remove trample.
Yeah, maybe remove trample. Keep flying, protection from instance. When you cast the spell, gain control, or you control which creatures attack and block. That's a cool version. I think that might fix Emrakul, truthfully.
We got it. We figured it out. Taylor, you got
We got it. All right, cool. Taylor, are you going to call WotC now? You have their number, right? So let them know.
What do you think I've been doing? I've been on hold this whole time.
Okay, that's why he's been so quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't need my help. You guys were inspired by it, but...
Yeah, okay, now Taylor, you talk. Go.
She got big butt.
Sick. Love that.
That's all I got.
Nice. Okay, well, this one was a much more moderate 2-hour podcast instead of the 2-hour 45 the last one was. This one was cool.
Better.
It was interesting having to talk about these cards in a much more specific way, and much different assignment here than just talking about our 5 favorite mechanics. This one was much more nuanced.
It's fun. I don't really mess with like card design stuff or like ideas for how I'd fix cards, so it was fun for me to actually try that once. And it was fun in the editor adding the word legendary in the type line changed the frame instantly. Yeah, I was right. Like, that was fun. Nice program.
Yeah, because Carver and I have experience making custom cards. I've actually been, I'll have dreams of Magic cards. And I have a list of probably I know, right? I have about a dozen custom cards I've made over the years in a notepad. So I've made cards from scratch, but I have never, ever balanced a current card. We've talked about it. Of course, we've had endless conversations about how this all started. Smuggler's Copter, really.
Smuggler's Copter, Deathrite Shaman.
Exactly. Like ad nauseum.
Oko, yeah.
Yes. So we talked about all these, but I've never actually done it and put it in practice and thought as from the perspective of a designer. And it's tough. And it feels really good when you kind of nail it. Like I felt really good about changing Copter from flying to haste and changing Uro. I had 2 or 3 different versions of Uro, and that one I finally was like, oh, this is it. This is super cool. So it's satisfying to kind of hit that thread, kind of nail it. Did you guys feel like you did that with any of your cards? I know Taylor, you did with Field of the Dead. That one was...
That was the only one that really set it off. And I like Skull Clamp. I felt pretty good about my Skull Clamp design,
yes, yours was great. Harvest was great, too. I just wish it wasn't -2/-2.
Yeah, I'm going to change it. The official version just
didn't suck so much.
I'm going to change that for sure.
+1, +0.
I think I still like the -1. I like...
Oh, +1, -1, +1, Yep. That's the better version for sure. Yeah, yours...
But I was really proud of mine thematically. I thought this, I like that.
I agree,
and I like the Emrakul attempt. Even though I think, well, again, I can, Kyle, I'm sure as from a let's say a logistical standpoint, I'm sure I'll keep this one as an image that I'll send you. And we talk about that. We can talk. I'll make one that's Master Warcraft and kind of what we ended on.
Okay, sure.
So then, But that version, and just talking that out was so much fun, and I'm proud of that one too, for sure. So
nice. Well, sweet. This was a cool one. We're definitely gonna do We have about 15 different Magic ideas. It's crazy when we started talking about this sort of behind the scenes, how many different ideas for Magic themed episodes you can do. It's virtually infinite.
Easy.
It's it's pretty crazy. So I'm totally down to do these once every 3 or 4 weeks, I guess, mostly depending on Carver's availability, since he actually has like a family and a life. But yeah, this one was sweet. I got nothing else to say. This was really fun, and looking forward to do the next one, whenever that is, a couple weeks from now, hopefully. A few 3 4 weeks.
Thanks, Carver, for joining us once again.
Of course, guys. It's always a blast talking about Magic. It's really no problem at all. So
didn't understand the assignment though. Had to
totally effed it up. Totally effed it up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Had to get him to balance some cards at short notice. But anyways, all right, cool. Good game. TTYL.
Till next time.
That means talk to you later. That's the end of it. Yep. Goodbye.
Goodbye, guys.